This is the Civivi Voltaic. I'm going to be disassembling this today. Let's jump right in. I'm going to take out the pivot bolt first, and then we'll go after the structural bolts. Pivot bolt on this one is a T8. Like is pretty standard for everything around these days. There's your pivot bolt. Other bolts are T6s. So here's the standoff bolt. And I believe they've done like they've done on the Cetos with this one and used the pocket clip bolt to go into the standoff as a structural bolt as well. That's a trend I'm seeing a lot on several knives here recently. Be careful with those bolts because they are not the same. The pocket clip bolt has a beveled head, whereas the standoff bolt has a kind of a step flat head. I'm going to take out this bolt too because I want to take out the wooden scale so you can see how nicely those fit together. Have not disassembled this knife before. I am doing it for the first time on camera here like I like to do. There's the pocket clip. There's the wood scale. There we go. That pops in. It just fits beautifully. I also wanted to take this off so I can assess the stiffness of the frame lock. You can see no relief hole there. Seeing that more recently, I'm a little bit concerned about the durability of that. But frame lock stiffness is actually pretty good. That's an all steel frame lock. You can see I can push on that really hard. And even with two thumbs, it's hard to get to contact the rest of the knife. So nice and sturdy there. Here are my bearings, decently sized bearings. They have recessed them into the handles and not into the blade, which is what I like to see, especially with a blade that's this thin. It's kind of a nice thin blade stock. Very large lock shelf there. That's a good thing for durability on an EDC like this if you're going to use it a lot. Here is the pivot bolt. That does thread in on this side, which is a bit unusual given that they've got it keyed there. Nice machining on the logo. There's your other bearings. Let's go ahead and be thorough here. I'll take off the scale on this side too, since we're disassembling the whole thing. There is the lanyard kind of spindle there. Here is the other bolt for the standoff. That will go there. And there is the knife completely disassembled. Again, stop pin travels with the blade, stops against the inside of those grooves there. I like that they've left that open so you can clean it more easily. It's interesting to me to see how clean this is. This coating seems to repel dirt some. I've carried this knife and I can't even tell. It's very clean. Also worth noting, there was no oil on this from the factory and it was still decently smooth. So I'm going to oil it when I put it back together here and see if it gets any smoother. That'll be interesting. A little bit of oil there. Where's my pivot bolt? I'll need my scale here first. Here's my scale. Pivot bolt goes in from the other side. No, it doesn't. It's this side. Sorry. I didn't see the little catch on there. There it is. There's that. There's my standoff. Actually, I better put the standoff back on before I put the bearings back in. That'll make my life a little easier. And I'm all about making the reassembling of these knives easier on myself. There's that standoff. There's this standoff. Get that bolt back in. And then we'll go after the blade. This is a very lefty friendly design. I'll show you once I've got it reassembled, but the wood scale runs interference for the frame lock, so you're less likely to accidentally hit your finger on the frame lock if you're a lefty. So good design there. I like that a lot. They've taken lefties into consideration on this knife. Get that on there. Let's get it seated. And then I'll put the scale on. Scales add a little bit of complexity to the reassembly of this knife, but not too much. There's my T6. Tighten that down. I'm actually going to put the pivot bolt back in first because it's popping up the scale there. And it's going to make the pocket clip easier to reassemble. It is fighting me a little bit here. Doesn't want to go back through that way. I'm going to have to loosen this again. There we go. Just a little bit of like a half a turn on that back scale bolt lets the pivot slide into the wooden scale, and then we can tighten this back up, and then we can get our pocket clip back on. Here's the bolt that holds just the pocket clip. And then we'll get the structural bolt in the back. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging because that pocket clip runs interference for it. Let's close the blade. Don't cut yourself. Get that onto there. Get that into there. And then we are fully reassembled. And we'll check the action and the centering. So centering looks perfect. Action is even better than it was before, which was already pretty good. So, good stuff there. We got no blade play. We got no catching. There's your reassembly.